second Ashra will be held on a similar time between 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. every day from today until the 15th of Muharram, 15th of September, sorry, which is next Tuesday. Our speaker, the Shaykh, who has gladly accepted our offer and who will be enlightening us with his knowledge, is Shaykh Hamza Sodagar, who will be speaking on the topic of the special companions of our Imam. On top of the majlis and the salams that will take place after once Masab ends and the majlis has fully completed, we have a slot for questions and answers. So any questions that may arise that you may have today or even throughout the series, you may send them to the admin here. But if you're watching through YouTube, you may leave them in the comment section. But on Zoom, you can send them to the admin Babul Ilm Society. Without further ado, I would like to invite Brother Jari Abbas to start us off with the tilawat of the Holy Quran. Jari, are you here?
Yes, Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam, Jari.
A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Qul a'udhu birabbin nas, malikin nas, ilahin nas, min sharril waswasil khannas, allazi yuwaswisu fi sudurin nas, minal jinnati wan nas. Sadaqallahul aliyyul azim. In the name of Allah, the most kind and most merciful. See, I seek refuge in the Lord of men, the King of men, the God of men, from the evil of the whisperings of the slinking shaitan, who whispers into the hearts of men. Sadaqallahul aliyyul azim.
Thank you, Jari Abbas, for your beautiful recitation and your translation that you provided. And indeed, it is only well and truly Allah who we should seek refuge within, as proven by our countless Imams, and specifically the sacrifice in Karbala, where Imam Hussein gave up everything that he owned, but not once did he complain, not once did he provide a moment of where he was not firm in his faith, because he fully displayed that his Lord, his Creator, and the one entity, the one being that he confided in entirely, would not allow any injustice to occur. And today we see the result as millions flock towards Imam Hussein, yelling labbaik, denouncing the evil that occurred. And as our Imam did all those years ago, it is up to us today to fight against the same Yazids. They have changed their faces, they might have changed their ways, but their sifat, their attributes are still the same. So whether be it the Yazid of 1400 years ago or the Yazid of today, it is our responsibility to not only identify them and denounce them, but to actively stand against them. Next, I would like to invite reciter Faraz Elisha to come forward and recite the salam for us. Brother Faraz, are you here?
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Yes, जो अशरा हमने शुरू किया, मौला हम सब की कोशिशें कबूल करे। तो मैं चाहता हूँ कि इसको एक दुआ से शुरू करें, इमाम मेहदी अलैहिस्सलाम की। तो चंद अशार आपके सामने, खुशनुद इमाम मेहदी अलैहिस्सलाम, बुलंदतर सलावत।
अल्लाहुम्मा सल्ली अला मुहम्मद व अला मुहम्मद अज्जल फरजन।
ऐ बारवे मौला मेरा ईमान जगा दे, ऐ बारवे मौला मेरा ईमान जगा दे, मिल जाए रज़ा रब की सलीका तू सिखा दे, मिल जाए रज़ा रब की सलीका तू सिखा दे, ऐ बारवे मौला मेरा ईमान जगा दे। खुद गर्जी का आलम है हर एक शख्स परेशान, मजहब से इबादत से है दूरी का ये सामा, मोमिन की है पहचान वो रास्ता तू दिखा दे, اے بار وے مولا میرا ایمان جگا دے، ہر سمت گناہوں کی فضا، ظلم ہے ہر سو، ہم لوگوں پہ سایہ کیے رہتا ہے بس ایک تو، ہر ایک گناہ کو میرے دامن سے بچا دے، اے بار وے مولا میرا ایمان جگا دے، غیبت کا جو پردہ ہے اسے اب تو اٹھا دے، دیوانے تڑپتے ہیں زیارت تو کرا دے، تو حجت خدا ہے جہاں کو یہ بتا دے، اے بار وے مولا میرا ایمان جگا دے، ہر پل میں عبادت ہو تلاوت ہو قرآنی، ہو یاد ہم کو بھی دعائے ندبہ زبانی، شامل تیرے لشکر میں ہو یہ عزم بنا دے، اے بار وے مولا میرا ایمان جگا دے، قائم رہے مجلس یہ عزاخانے ہمارے، ٹوٹے نہ وسیلوں کے مرادوں کے سہارے، جو دشمن شبیر ہے اس کو تو مٹا دے، جو دشمن شبیر ہے اس کو تو مٹا دے، اے بار وے مولا میرا ایمان جگا دے، آچائے نشیت پہ بپا شاہ کا ہو غم، جھک پائے گا پرچم نہ رکے گا کبھی ماتم، یہ ذکر حسینی ہے اسے عزم وفا دے، اے بار وے مولا میرا ایمان جگا دے، مولا تجھے زینب کی اسیری کی قسم ہے، مولا تجھے زینب کی اسیری کی قسم ہے، جو بھی ہے گرفتار یا جس گھر میں بھی غم ہے، صدقے میری بی بی کے نجات ان کو دلا دے، اے بار وے مولا میرا ایمان جگا دے، اولاد سے محروم ہے بھرتی ہے جو آہیں، بہنیں جو پکڑ کر کریں جھولے کو دعائیں، ان لوگوں کے گلشن میں بس اب پھول کھلا دے، اے بار وے مولا میرا ایمان جگا دے، جن کا نہیں ایمان و امامت پہ بھروسہ، وہ اصل میں دیتے ہیں علی دین کو دھوکا، کیا حکم نبی ہے انہیں تو آ کے سنا دے، کیا حکم نبی ہے انہیں تو آ کے سنا دے، اے بار وے مولا میرا ایمان جگا دے، مل جائے رضا رب کی سلیقہ تو سکھا دے، اے بار وے مولا میرا ایمان جگا دے، خوشنود امام مہدی علیہ السلام بلندتر صلوات، صلی علی محمد
اللہم صلی علی محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجہم. اے میرے بارے میں مولا میرا ایمان جگا دیں. A beautiful reminder yet again that our Imam is as muntazir of us being prepared to receive him as we are of him. You know, we say Al-Ajal ya Imam, come and avenge the blood of Imam Hussein, avenge the massacre that occurred in Karbala. But how prepared are we to follow in the footsteps of our Imam? Hopefully using these lectures, hopefully by sticking to the first of Azza, by working hard and, you know, through reflection, we can attain a position where we can join the Awan and Ansar of our Aimma, of the Imam of our time specifically. I would also like to remind everyone that once the Majlis ends, we have a 20-minute question and answer session with the Shaykh. If you would like, you can send your questions directly to Babul Ilm Society host through the chat here. And without further ado, I would like to invite Shaykh Hamza Sodagar, who has so gladly and pleasantly accepted our offer and will be lecturing us for the next 10 days upon the topic of the special companions of the Imam. Shaykh, are you with us here now?
Assalamu alaikum. Yes, I am.
Wa alaikum assalam, Shaykh.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المكرمين المنتجبين لا سيما بقية الله في الأراضين روحي وأرواح العالمين لتراب مقدمه الفداء ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين. For the hastening the return of our Imam, let's recite the salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajjal farajahum. We thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the opportunity to be with you, brothers and sisters. In Ireland, unfortunately, I have not had the tawfiq to see you in person, but inshallah, maybe one day that will be possible as well. Inshallah, Allah help us over the course of these nights to be able to gain proximity to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to get closer to the Imam of our time and to the Ahlul Bayt. The topic I've been given, and inshallah we'll try to explore, is the special companions of our Imams. So inshallah we're going to try to go over some of the companions of our Imams, various Imams, learn a little about who they were, and more so learn why they were so great and why they were special companions of those Imams, as that is going to help us learn from each of those companions to gain that closeness, that proximity to the Imam of our time. The first companion that we'd like to cover is Salman, known as Salman al-Farsi, as he was a Persian who had moved to Arabia in search of the last prophet and ended up as a slave. And when he met the prophet, he accepted him as the prophet. He was a companion of the Holy Prophet. And after the demise of the Holy Prophet, he was a companion of Amirul Mu'mineen, Salamullah alayh, who spent time with Amirul Mu'mineen in Medina for as long as he could, until the second Khalifa wanted him, since he had Persian roots, to govern part of the newly conquered regions that were part of the Persian Empire, namely Madain, which falls around current-day Baghdad, which is where he is buried. That's where he passed. When he was asked by that Khalifa to govern that region, he didn't want to accept. And he went to Amir al-Mu'mineen and he said that I don't want to leave you, and I don't want to be separated from you. I don't want to accept this. And Amir al-Mu'mineen told him to accept it. And so based on the command of Amir al-Mu'mineen, he accepted that position. Amir al-Mu'mineen told him, when others told him to accept a position in government, to rule over a region, to be a governor, Salman did not accept. When Amir al-Mu'mineen told him that he needs to do this, this is his taklif, then he accepted, he went along with it. Salman has got many aspects for us to cover and to learn from. He has been described in numerous ahadith and sayings of the Imams in different ways as one of the greatest companions of the Ma'sumin. In fact, one of the other companions that we're going to be covering, inshallah, later on, whose name is Yunus ibn Abdul Rahman, he is said to have been the Salman of his time. So Salman was so well known to be such a great person and mentioned so many times by the Imams that when they wanted to say another person is such a great person, they say this person is like Salman. He's got many aspects, many attributes, many reasons to be considered a special companion of Amir al-Mu'mineen after the demise of the Prophet. There's one aspect that I would like to cover and I think is important for us to learn here. And that is the part of the life of Salman that I perhaps spent a little more time explaining, and that is the latter part of his life. Salman was asked to govern a region, to join a government, what was identified, what was seen as, what was called the Islamic government. The ruler, at that point, the second Khalifa, was considered the Khalifa of the Prophet, was considered the successor to the Prophet, the one who succeeded the Prophet in taking the position of the ruler, ruling the land in the name of Islam and based on the rules and guidelines of Islam. This is what the government is supposed to be representing. He was asked to rule in this government, as part of this government, to be part of the authority on the land of this government. The response of Salman was that I will not be part of this government. I will not be part of the authority ruling land if the ruler is who he is. If the governor is who he is, if the one who says he succeeds the Prophet, the one who says he is the Khalifa of the Prophet is who he is that individual, or any other individual besides the one that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said to be the successor to the Holy Prophet, which is Ali ibn Abi Talib. If there's anyone but Ali ibn Abi Talib as the ruler, as the governor, succeeding the Prophet, I will not accept this. When did Salman accept authority? When did he take on that responsibility to rule over that area of Muslim lands that is now added on, that has now joined Muslim lands after the conquest of that part of Persia? He accepted it when Amir al-Mu'mineen told him to, when Ali ibn Abi Talib told him to, when the legitimate ruler of Islam, when the legitimate Khalifa of the Prophet told him to, he accepted government. Otherwise, he didn't accept government. This may seem initially as a very, maybe to us as Shia, what we have heard of the history of the Ahlul Bayt, the history of Amir al-Mu'mineen, the history of the Prophet, what we have heard about Ghadir, and about how after Ghadir, when the Prophet was in his deathbed, there were plots already in place, already moving forward to usurp the right of Ali ibn Abi Talib as the legitimate authority appointed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and mentioned to people, announced to people on the day of Ghadir officially as the ruler after the Prophet. As Shia hearing that, and then hearing about the second Khalifa and his track record, and then hearing Salman behaving in this way, we pretty much think that, well, of course he should be doing that. Yes, he did the right thing. And this is how a believer should be behaving. How dare anyone accept government from an illegitimate ruler that has usurped the right of Ali ibn Abi Talib? I think all have that type of sentiment towards this, and this is how we feel towards it when we hear this story. There's a problem with this sentiment. There's a problem with this feeling that is common amongst the Shia, common amongst the followers of the Ahlul Bayt. The problem with it is that this feeling is a feeling towards a historic event. It's a feeling towards what happened in the past. In regards to people of the past, the person who is praised is in the past. The person who is condemned is in the past. Ali ibn Abi Talib is in the past. Salman is in the past. The second Khalifa is in the past. All of that we're able to see, we're able to have strong feelings against some, strong feelings towards some. And when we hear what Salman did, we obviously praise that and we consider that something that obviously he should be doing. The reason why that is a problem is that if we have a similar scenario today, where as the brother, the presenter, the brother who MCs the session correctly mentioned, identifying the Yazids of the time, if the Yazids of the time, the second Khalifas of the time, anyone who has got illegitimate authority, if they present an opportunity to a Muslim, to a follower of the Ahlul Bayt, a Shia of the Ahlul Bayt, if that is presented to them, they don't think of asking Ali ibn Abi Talib or telling Ali ibn Abi Talib salamullah alayh that I will not accept this. And then if Ali ibn Abi Talib tells him you must accept, he says, your command I obey. They don't do that. And besides the person themselves, if that opportunity presents itself to a Muslim, to a follower of the Ahlul Bayt, and that person accepts without the command of Ali ibn Abi Talib, not only do we not feel that something wrong has happened, many of us actually start to praise that individual. We feel good. We say good things. Oh, the mayor of London is Muslim. Really? If the mayor of London is Muslim, if he's following Islamic instructions, the authority of the land is a taghut in Britain. If the taghut, which is much worse than the time of the second Khalifa, if that taghut gives this opportunity to govern a certain region, being part of the authority of that government, should he accept? Should he be part of that? Should he accept without it being a command from Ali ibn Abi Talib? Those are not thoughts that come to our minds. Those are not the feelings that we have towards that. When we're told that the mayor of that city is a Muslim, we feel, oh, great, a Muslim is now the face of the government as the mayor of London. This is the way we feel. There's a lot to say about that. There's a whole lot to say about that. If on a lower scale, a Shia sees an opportunity to be on a lower scale, not the mayor of London, the capital of one of the governments of Taghut that has ruined the world over centuries, stolen resources of the world, human resources, natural resources, lands, stolen so much from the Muslim world in so many different areas, installed the Al Saud family in Saudi Arabia and instructed them. They acted as the limbs, they acted as the hand, the iron fist of the British Empire in that region. They didn't act alone. They didn't come to power on their own. There was a coup against the previous ruler of that land. The British were the ones who supported Al Saud. All the crimes of Al Saud, all of the wrongs of Al Saud from that point in time up to today are shared by the governments of Britain and the United States of America. Up to a certain point, it was the British, and after that, it was the US government. So if somebody has what they call an opportunity presented to them about being part of the government in Britain, being part of the government in the United States of America on a much lower scale, how does one feel about that? How is that seen by the Shia of Ali ibn Abi Talib, by the followers of Hussein? Unfortunately, it is for the most part seen as an opportunity. It's seen as a good thing. A lot of people are talking about joining those governments, being part of government, joining the parliament in those governments, joining the Congress in the US. Muslimin need to have a voice. These are the types of words, the catchy phrases, the deception. We need to have a voice. What do you mean we need to have a voice? You mean, what it really means is that we need to be part of this tyranny. What that means is that we're going to be accepting from the second Khalifa without asking Ali ibn Abi Talib, without the approval of Ali ibn Abi Talib. Salamullah alayhi. This is what we learn from Salman. If even the second Khalifa, look, as much as in the Shia community we have evidence of the wrongdoing of the second Khalifa, and we do have, there's plenty of it for anyone. It's not, these are not facts of history that can be disputed. These are facts of history that are evident, that are clear. You would need to turn a blind eye to them, not to see them. As much as we have that, the crimes and the wrongdoings compared to the wrongdoing of these governments is really not even comparable. It's not even comparable. And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. I'll give you evidence for why that is. Ali ibn Abi Talib decided to live under the second Khalifa, but not under the Persian Empire. He didn't leave. Ali ibn Abi Talib salamullah alayhi didn't say, well, we have such a bad ruler here and it's not good to live under him, let's move. Not only that, when Salman said, I don't want to accept this because this is not the legitimate ruler, Amir al-Mu'mineen says basically that although he's not the legitimate ruler, I, as the legitimate ruler, tell you that this system is still an Islamic system. And I'm here protecting it. And I tell you, rule. It is a system, despite the fact that the wrongdoings of the second Khalifa are there, they are documented, they are wrong. Ali ibn Abi Talib still provides guidance to the second Khalifa. And the second Khalifa implements them. Look at Nahjul Balagha. When the second Khalifa, regarding the conquest of Persia, decides to go to the battlefield just to be able to bring more numbers in the battlefield, to be able to defeat the Persians, the threat that was there on their borders. The Persians were attacking the Muslimin. They were preparing. The Muslimin had to defend themselves. He was worried, the second Khalifa was worried that enough people are not going to show up and they will be defeated. And the Persians will start coming towards them and destroying the Muslimin. He needs to protect. So he decided to go to the battlefield himself. Amir al-Mu'mineen heard of that, sent him a message, said, no, you shouldn't go. You're the ruler. You've got to stay here and people will go, and don't worry about numbers. It was never about numbers. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will protect his religion. You don't go to the battlefield. And he accepted that. He went with what Ali ibn Abi Talib said. And in multiple other instances. During the time of Muawiyah even, as bad as, and there's no comparison between the second Khalifa and Muawiyah. Muawiyah is the manifestation of kufr in the cloak of Islam. That's who Muawiyah is. Muawiyah is the son, we read in Ziyarat Ashra, وَابْنُ آكِلَةِ الْأَكْبَادِ, the son of the female who eats livers, the one who split open the corpse of a man, not just any man, the uncle of the Prophet, Sayyid al-Shuhada of that time. He was opened up, a female, and bit into the liver of Hamza, that type of hatred and grudge against the leaders of the Muslimin. Muawiyah is the son of this woman, the son of Abu Sufyan, the arch enemy of the Prophet, that even when he said he accepts Islam, he didn't accept Islam. There's no comparison between Muawiyah and the second Khalifa. Yet, when the truce was there, for reasons that I hope are discussed and the believers understand what the treaty between Muawiyah, la'natullah alayh, and Imam al-Mujtaba, salamullah alayh, what that was, we need to have an understanding of that. Imam al-Mujtaba didn't say this is a horrible government, the worst government on earth, we need to leave it, let's go to Rome, let's go to Egypt, let's go to Africa, let's go to Persia, let's go to whatever other, let's go to China. Imam al-Mujtaba didn't say that. These are Muslim lands. This is government that, despite the fact that it has deviated from the path of Islam as it was during the time of the Prophet, still it's better to live under this than to live under open kufr. Open kufr. And each of the Imams behaved in that way. Each of the Imams. None of the Imams left. Imam Zayn al-Abidin after Karbala didn't say this is a horrible land, horrible rulers, the worst rulers, let's go find some other place that is not ruled and governed by these people. They were horrible. In comparison, however, in comparison to absolute kufr, it's better. It's better. And so this is something for us, brothers and sisters. when you do that comparison and get that evidence from the behavior, the conduct, the words of the Ma'sumin, the words of Ali ibn Abi Talib towards that government, his conduct towards the government in comparison to other governments, even the conduct of Imam al-Hussein towards Yazid, towards the government, compared to other governments. Imam al-Hussein says, this government needs to be fixed, not that we leave this and go to another government. Other governments are worse. When we get that, then when we look at what Salman did and Amir al-Mu'mineen approved of, and then we look at our context, this should be very clear. If there was ever for anyone an opportunity to join a government of kufr, be part of the authority of kufr, at least if we want to be special companions of the Imams, we should say they're not legitimate rulers. They don't have a right to ask me or tell me to rule here or be part of this or be part of that. They don't have that. The one who has it is the Imam of our time, Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajuhu Sharif. And the Imam of our time has not left us without guidance in that area in his absence. He is not. Anyone who thinks that the Imam of our time went into occultation without telling us in regards to government what we are obligated to do, what we are supposed to do, if he is the authority of all lands and everything needs to go under him, if he goes into occultation, if he doesn't tell us what to do, that means we're lost. The Mahdi, the one who is the guided and the guide, cannot leave people without guidance, cannot leave us without instructions, without a way of taking care of that important need. And he has said during the time of the occultation, the mujtahideen that are pious, the mujtahids that know Islam inside out, who are so pious, if all of their children are slaughtered before them, they will not change one rule in Islam. Those types of mujtahids, those types of ulama, not mediocre muammams, not people who visit Buckingham Palace, not people who decide for their material gains to change everything in Islam. The types of ulama that follow the path of Hussein, they will have every single member of their family slaughtered, but not change one rule in Islam. And they have the ability to understand the rules of Islam. They understand the Quran. They understand the riwayat of the Ahlul Bayt, the sayings and the narrations of the Ahlul Bayt, the conduct of the Ahlul Bayt. Those who have these qualities, the Imam of our time has said, during my absence in your view, in your eyes, where you don't have contact with me, where you cannot see me, and I am in hiding, I will be acting as your leader without you seeing me. During these times, the person that you do have access to, the people that you do have access to, that you do need to go to, are the mujtahideen that are pious to that level of piety, where they will not change one rule in Islam, the slightest, tiniest rule in Islam. They will not allow it to be changed, even if their entire family is slaughtered before their eyes, before they are tortured to death. Not. When this situation arises, where a person has got access to being part of the authority of Taghut, there should be that voice, if we want to be of the special companions, at least of the Ahlul Bayt. I'm not going to accept this. This is not something for me to do. They don't have a right to be the authorities of the land to begin with, much less to tell me to be part of that and for me to accept. I need to ask the Ali ibn Abi Talib of my time, and the Ali ibn Abi Talib of my time, who is in ghaiba, who is in occultation, has told me, in my occultation, go to these mujtahideen. I need to think, okay, I need to go and speak to the mujtahideen. Is that the thought process? It's not the thought process. It is assumed that, oh, this is a great thing. Now we have a voice. Now all these words and voices and whispers of the shaitan. Yes, if those types of mujtahids that we mentioned, not the ones that are paid by the British intelligence, not the ones who are protected by the American government, whatever color amama they wear, not those, the pious mujtahideen. If they realize that for Islam, this person or that person should be involved in that land, the same way Ali ibn Abi Talib told Salman, you do need to be involved in this. And he took it because Ali ibn Abi Talib told him, not because he considered the authority of the land to be legitimate. In a similar way, if a believer has got a situation, they need to go to the mujtahideen and ask, is this something that we should take? If they say, because the Imam of our time has said, they are the ones to go to, if they say it for Islam, then it's going to be not only a legitimate thing to do, but it's going to be an obligation, but to serve Islam, not that government, not that illegitimate authority. It's not about them. It's for Islam. And it's going to be a difficult task. It's going to be a difficult task because you're not serving them, you're serving Islam. There's conflict of interest. There's serious conflict of interest. If a mu'min is told by the representatives of the Imam of our time that you need to take this position for Islam, it's not the same as, oh, so we're taking on this role, nice, we have good amounts coming in, the income quadruples, influence quadruples, the cameras are on you, and then you start to talk about things the way the authorities want. You start talking about Islam the way they want. You start condemning groups that they condemn. They decided to put Hezbollah as one of the terrorist organizations. Now you need to consider Hezbollah as a terrorist organization. They want to consider Hamas as a terrorist organization. Now you are going to be considering Hamas as a terrorist organization. Is that what the Imam of our time is going to say? Is that for Islam? Is that for Fatima-to-Zahra? Is that for Imam al-Hussein? Is that the path of Imam al-Hussein? To consider those who are fighting Husseini, who are acting the way Hussein wants them to, in fighting the Zionist regime. These authorities are supporting the Zionist regime and considering Hezbollah, considering Hamas to be terrorists. And now you side with these authorities considering Hezbollah and Hamas to be terrorist organizations, or even just saying that and saying, oh, I don't believe in it, I'm just saying it. Is that good for Islam? Is that joining that for Islam? Salman, as the hadith says, Salman, minna ahl al-bayt. He's one of us. That's how great a rank he had. One of the important aspects that is mostly not seen of Salman is this behavior, this conduct of Salman, which stems from a very accurate understanding of religion, of the political conditions, of the responsibilities, and then behaving in that way. Unfortunately, a lot of us are completely lost when it comes to these ideas. we have been raised with, unfortunately, deception in the West, the deception of the media. Subconsciously, even those of us who think that we are revolutionary, we are politically aware, there's layers of deception that have penetrated our thought process, our belief system. We need to get rid of that residue. We need to get rid of that kufr and try to get the clarity that Salman had. Not even, he wasn't even tempted to accept it. He wasn't even tempted, and his conditions could have changed. You know what the conditions of the companions of Ali ibn Abi Talib, the ones who sided with Ali ibn Abi Talib, were during those times? Ali ibn Abi Talib was completely marginalized after the demise of the Prophet. And anyone who decided to be with Ali ibn Abi Talib was completely marginalized after being someone who was seen with the Prophet, a companion of the Prophet, enjoying the attention of people. Anyone who was closer with the Prophet had joined Islam earlier, like Salman had, like others had. They enjoyed a lot of respect. But once they joined Ali ibn Abi Talib after the demise of the Prophet, they all were marginalized. We don't understand what that means. Now an opportunity has presented itself to him to be able to be, again, a center of attention. All those temptations. Salman is not even tempted. He does not try to use any type of religious rhetoric, religious justification. Oh, if I accept this, then I can preach tashayyu' there. Let me accept. No, he's that clear what Islam's guidelines on this matter are. He's not tempted, therefore he doesn't try to justify that for himself. Rather, what he does is clearly no. It's a clear no. I'm not even, it seems from the readings that we have, it seems that he didn't even go to Ali ibn Abi Talib, can I do this? He knows Ali ibn Abi Talib is the actual authority of the land. He knows that. And he knows Ali ibn Abi Talib takes the responsibility that God has given him very seriously. So he knows if Ali ibn Abi Talib thinks that Salman needs to become the governor of Madain, he's going to tell me to do that. I don't need to go and ask him. Me going and asking him is a wrong decision. I shouldn't even ask him. I shouldn't even ask him. He knows me. He knows those conditions. He knows this suggestion, this recommendation, this offer has been given to me. He knows that. Me going and asking him would be because I want that. And I'm trying to get Ali ibn Abi Talib to agree to that. I'm not going to do that. I'm not even going to approach Ali ibn Abi Talib about this. I will say no. Because this offer, as it has been presented to me, is an illegitimate offer. It's not an offer. It's an offer to enter hellfire. I'm not going to accept it. Ali ibn Abi Talib knows. If he tells me to go, I will go. This is a different level of understanding what happened there. It's a different level of understanding what happened. It's that clarity, brothers and sisters. There's a certain behavior that's there. There's a certain conduct, a certain way of performance that you see in Salman. That's something to note and to notice and to praise and to want to replicate in our lives in different ways. Again, there's a lot to learn from that. But more importantly, behavior, brothers and sisters, conduct, action stems from understanding. If we don't have an in-depth understanding of the thought process, the ideological aspect of what Salman did, why he did it, what he was thinking, and get that straight in our heads, then if we look at this context and we see what Salman did, we're going to take it very superficially, at face value. And when we do that, which we do very frequently, unfortunately, we hear Imam al-Hussein said, the likes of me will never pledge allegiance to the likes of Yazid. We take that superficially, and then we're confused about how to behave. We don't understand the background of this. We don't understand the philosophy behind this. We don't think about what the ideological explanation for it is. We just see something, we take it at face value. Oh, the likes of me will never pledge allegiance to Yazid. So if we identify a Yazid, then never allegiance, never this, never that, so on and so forth. Let me explain one more example to bring this point home for us to understand. There was a certain conduct of the Prophet during his time. And that is that the Holy Prophet, sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, used to dye his beard. When he was older, obviously he became Rasulullah at age 40. He still has, if any, gray hair. It's mostly non-gray, whatever his blessed beard color was. Eventually he grew older, and all the pressures that mounted, the burden that the Quran talks about on his shoulders, obviously is going to turn his hair entirely gray. He used to dye his hair. Ali ibn Abi Talib sallallahu alayhi, at that time was obviously very young. When the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa passed, he was 33 years of age. But then the last 5 years of his life, which is the last few years of 50, he died. He had Ali ibn Abi Talib salamullah alayhi, ruhi fidah. He was so close to the Prophet in his behavior, his conduct. Allah gave him the exact age and the amount of years that the Prophet had. The Prophet had 63 years of age when he passed. Ali ibn Abi Talib had 63 years of age when he was martyred. Amir al-Mu'mineen tried to replicate and implement exactly what the Prophet said and did. But during the lifetime of Ali ibn Abi Talib, in those years when he was now the governor, in his last couple years of 50, 58 through 63, those 5 years that he was the ruler, all the pressure and all the burden of Imam after the demise of the Prophet had caused his hair to grow gray. Now it's time, if there's any dyeing process in terms of dyeing his beard or his hair, this is the time for it. But he didn't. He didn't. The one who carefully did exactly as the Prophet did not dye his hair. They came to Ali ibn Abi Talib and said, the sunnah of the Prophet is to dye your hair. He said, no, you took things superficially. You said, oh, the Prophet dyed his beard, then everybody should dye their beard when it's gray. No, that's not what the Prophet did. Amir al-Mu'mineen said the Prophet dyed his hair and encouraged others who had gray hair to do so, not because that was good in and of itself, rather because this was in preparation for battle, for the battlefield, in order to scare the enemies. Instead of allowing them to feel courage against the believers, if the enemies would see a bunch of people with gray hair, they would think, oh, these are a bunch of oldies, we're going to get rid of them. And that would give them courage. The Prophet says we need to take steps to make them not have that feeling and to feel more intimidated. In order to do that, those who have gray hair, dye your beards. Dye your hair a different color so it's not evident that you're older. So they wouldn't think that they can get rid of us easy. So that would not fuel their courage in moving forward and giving them more energy to fight. When you take things superficially, this is what happens. Oh, the Prophet dyed his beard. Everybody says the sunnah of the Prophet was the... Amir al-Mu'mineen says, no, understand the idea, the thought process, the reasoning. What happened? What did the Prophet do? Take that, implement it as he did. If you are in those conditions, then dye your hair. Or if there's another measure that needs to be taken to make the enemies feel that they cannot approach Muslimin, and take those measures. Understanding the philosophy that Salman has learned from Islam, from the Holy Prophet, from the Quran, from Ali ibn Abi Talib as his Imam, where he does not even in any way entertain the idea in his head that maybe I should accept this. Maybe I should even approach Ali ibn Abi Talib to ask him. No, Ali ibn Abi Talib is the ruler. I don't need to go and ask him. I don't need to ask him. He knows. My job when they offer this to me is no, absolutely not. Then Ali ibn Abi Talib that knows about him, about this and about him and about the conditions comes and tells him, Salman, go for it. He says, okay, I will go. And then of course, there's another very nice thing in this story that Salman does. His attachment to the Imam, his heartfelt attachment to the Imam, where although the connection with the Imam is not limited to the material realm, but he does not want to lose even that part of his connection with Amir al-Mu'mineen. So he tells him, but Ya Ali, I don't want to be separated from you. I don't want to be somewhere where Ali is not next door, where I could see Ali ibn Abi Talib with my eyes every day. I don't want to leave. Now that Amir al-Mu'mineen is telling him, Salman doesn't want to disobey, but he raises this concern, this heart of mine is going to feel, what am I supposed to do with this, Ya Ali? If you tell me to go, I will, but I'm telling you, I'd rather be here and see you. Ali ibn Abi Talib says, go, I will come to you. I will. If you accept in those conditions the command of Ali ibn Abi Talib, the command of the Imam of our time, in whatever the issue may be, against your will and against your desire. Salman didn't have any desire to rule, to be part of any type of authority, the desire, okay? If it's Islamic authority, then it's taklif, it's a different story. But in terms of desire, temptation, he didn't have that. His heart was inclined towards being with Ali ibn Abi Talib. But if you go against even that inclination, it's a good inclination to want to be in the presence of the Imam, to see the Imam. It's not a bad thing, it's a great thing. And you raise that with the Imam says, accept this, I will come to you. Isn't that beautiful? If we do and follow instructions of the Ahlul Bayt, if we identify to the best of our ability, brothers and sisters, we are living in a time where the Imam of our time is absent to us from our eyes. His voice is absent to our ears. We do not hear him, unfortunately. It's a unfortunate situation for us. We are deprived of that privilege. We live at this time. If we try our best through the means that the Imams, including the Imam of our time, have given us. The Imam, again, did not leave us as orphans without any guidance. No, all the guidance has been provided, what to do during the occultation. If we go and spend time and try to understand that and try to implement what the Imam has said, what the Imams have said, what the Prophet has said, what the Quran has said, which this book is available to all of us. If we go against our desires and follow those instructions, inshallah, the Imam of our time will say, I will come to you. I will visit you. And this is something that is precedented. It's not only Salman's time. During the occultation, there's multiple accounts that have been verified by ulama. The ones that are not verified by ulama that know what they're talking about, we can't trust. But the ones that have been verified by our ulama that know the dynamics of seeing the Imam, those we can trust. There are multiple accounts. There's one of them that I still, every time I remember, it's it's a great reminder. There was a time in the current day Islamic Republic, at the time it was not an Islamic Republic and it was not an Islamic government. It was a Shah, a monarch, a king that was the British puppet. Reza Shah was the first foreign puppet. Before that, there were kings that were not good, but they were not foreign puppets. They were not puppets of kuffar. They were not put into power by the kuffar. The first such ruler in Iran was Reza Shah. He forced women to take off their hijab, which means the British government, one of the crimes of the British government is for the country that has a dominant majority Shia population, they enforced the daughters of Zahra, the daughters of Zainab, they were trying to force them, they beat them to take off their hijab. If any woman would show up on the streets, the police beat them and snatched their hijabs like the afternoon of Ashura. This is what Reza Shah did, which means this is what the British government did to the Shias, the followers of the Ahlul Bayt in that part of the world. During that time, the women who were believers, strong believers, obviously they weren't going to allow that to happen to them. So they stayed at home, and it was difficult not leaving the house. Some, when it was necessary, they would have to go from the roof, not get on the streets, go, rooftops were connected, and go where they needed to through rooftops with all the limitations. Obviously, not every rooftop is connected. Very, very limited, but they were not willing to go where the police would snatch their hijabs. They wouldn't allow that. So one of the women that did that was a very pious woman in Mashhad. At the same time, there was this alim, there was this Hawza student, not one of the great Maraja, but one of the ulama Hawza students. He was really wanting to see the Imam of our time, and he went and asked ulama, read books, how to meet the Imam, what amal to do, what dhikr to do, what should I repent from, all these things. And he tried for years. He was in search of and did whatever he knew and whatever he could get his hands on to be able to just meet the Imam. And after years of trying this, he was finally able to get the Imam to want to meet him. A message was sent to him, meet me at this place. And he goes, and that place was the house of this mu'minah, this woman who was such a great woman. The Imam of our time not only went there, but he told this man, if you want to visit me, if you want to see me, come to the house of this mu'minah, this woman. And then when he goes there, the Imam tells him, look, you don't need to go through all that to try to meet me. Be as this woman is, I will come and visit you. What did the woman do? What Salman did? Follow the instructions of Islam. Follow what Islam says regularly, what the Imam of our time says regularly. If you do that, if it's something that is the maslahah of Islam, the Imam of our time will come and visit. We hope that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helps us. Sallallahu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. Sallallahu alayka ya Mazlum. Sallallahu alayk أيها الشهيد بكربلاء عطشانا. May Allah's peace and blessings be upon you, my beloved Imam al-Hussein. May Allah's peace and blessings be upon you, my beloved oppressed Imam, the Imam who was slaughtered by the shores of the Euphrates, while his mouth was dry of thirst. روحي فداك يا مولاي. These days, brothers and sisters, the family of Imam al-Hussein, Zainab Salamullah alayha, Ruba, Kulthum, the other ladies of the Haram of Imam al-Hussein, along with the children, Sakina and others, are being taken towards Sham, displayed in every city, pulled in chains. Salamullah alaykum, Ya Ahla Bayt al-Nubuwwah. I wish I was there to be a protection for you. I wish I could take those chains off of you and be enchained myself instead. They say Imam Zainul Abidin Salamullahi alayhi, the chains were put so tight and the journey was so long, the chains were digging into his neck, into his arms, bleeding all the way. What they did to our Imam, what they did to the children of Imam al-Hussein. روحي فداكم على لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين يا حسين.
MashaAllah, thank you, Shaykh. It was truly an eye-opening lecture, especially drawing inspiration from the Ashab of the Prophet, Ashab of the Aimma, Salman Farsi, a very popular figure that we all know, and to bring such points forward to our attention as well. Once again, thank you, Shaykh. And we did not receive any questions, so I'll begin with the first one that was posed to you. So the first question that was brought forward, Shaykh, was the person who asked the question goes, Salam Agha, I understand living in the West, more precisely Taghuti systems, is almost equal to or predominantly benefiting Taghut, and therefore might fall in the same bucket as Imam Hussein alayhi salam said to the Kufis that your stomachs are filled with haram. I know that this goes down to an individual's own assessment, but how precisely can one decide or determine whether he is doing enough to stay in these countries? So that is the first question that is being asked here.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. It's a good question to ask, and I want to bring it back to the point that we mentioned earlier, that it must be, these questions should be presented to the Imam, or in the absence of the Imam, to those that the Imam has given us as go-to people in his absence, which are the Maraja. The Maraja have considered it to be okay for a person to live in the West, even if it's simply living in the West. Given that, and with the condition that they don't actively support those systems. This means that the point that we were raising, if the systems, if the Taghuts want to use the abilities of a Muslim for their purposes in the military, in the political system, in the military industrial complex, in anywhere where, in the media, which is a platform created to form public opinion in various parts of the world to their benefit against Islam. If they want to do that, you cannot join those. But other than that, if you decide to live in those countries, you're allowed to do so, even if your purpose is not to serve the Imam of our time. Meaning your purpose in moving to those places is not serving the Imam of our time. You move there because in where you were living, the living conditions were not as good. You chose to leave and go to a country ruled by kuffar. You're allowed to do that. The Maraja have said they are the go-to people. Their verdict for us is to be treated as what the Imam of our time has said. Why? Because the Imam of our time said, the hadith from the Imam of our time is this: وَأَمَّا الْحَوَادِثُ الْوَاقِعَةِ فَارْجِعُوا فِيهَا إِلَى رُوَاةِ حَدِيثِنَا فَإِنَّهُمْ حُجَّتِي عَلَيْكُمْ وَأَنَا حُجَّةُ اللَّهِ. I am they are my hujjah before you, or they are my hujjah over you, and I'm God's hujjah. I'm Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's hujjah. So, since the Imam of our time has said this, we need to go to the Maraja. The Maraja have said choosing to live out here is an option that we have, even if we're not here for those greater goals. It's allowed, it's permissible. So we don't have to worry about living out here being a sin or being comparable to the Kufans and what they did. No, that's not the case. We don't have to think that way. And that isn't the case. If it was, we would have to leave, but the Maraja have not said that that is the case. Therefore, we know it's not the case. So once we get past that, then the questions are, if we want to be better people, if we don't want to be the average follower of the Ahlul Bayt, we want to be the special companions of the Imam of our time, like Salman was. Now what should we do? Then comes a time to start looking at what needs to be done. And in one phrase, if I may put this, if we want to be the companions, special companions of the Imam of our time, our job out here is to spread the message of the Ahlul Bayt to the people, not only preserve it within our circles and our offspring and our new immigrants that come, and make sure we hold together and we don't assimilate in a negative way, but rather we share and we spread the positive that the Ahlul Bayt have given us. It's not ours. We don't have any ownership over it. It's been given to us. Allah has blessed us with this great blessing of the Ahlul Bayt. We need to share that and spread that on all levels. It's not just the rituals. It's not just the ceremonies. It's not just the commemorations. It's not just talk about history, but also the political awareness. All of that is Islam, and all of that is great to share. All the people of the world need to be freed of the tyranny of the tyrants that have confused people, created a culture that causes people to go astray, go the wrong direction, hurts people. The Imam of our time is caring for all people of the globe, and he's going to rid all the people of the globe from the tyranny of the tyrants that they live under. And so if we want to be special companions of the 12th Imam, we need to help him by giving the correct opinion and understanding of the conditions to the people, because the tyrant's most effective tool is the media presenting the image of reality in a completely skewed way, where the people think they understand what's happening, whereas they completely misunderstand what's happening. We need to help by helping people correctly understand. Just recently, you all heard, out of desperation, utter desperation, they're coming out with a type of behavior that everyone in the world knows is despicable, the way they are treating the Quran and the Prophet with these cartoons, calling it freedom of speech, and so on and so forth. It's desperation. and it will not have any effect. In fact, it will have the reverse effect. At this point, these types of behavior will only make things worse for them and better for Islam. People will ask, why in the world is this lady with such foul behavior, foul language? It's a book. I thought people said that libraries are burnt by the Mongols and savage people, or the Mongols of Genghis Khan or whatever, not the Mongolian people are great people. Any people are great people. The historic figures I'm talking about. I thought burning books, ripping books, this is a book. It contains knowledge. What is ripping it going to do? It shows the idiotic ideology of a people that are putting this forth and getting it to the media, making sure it gets coverage for it. It's going to have the reverse effect. These are ways that they are using, depicting a negative image of the Prophet, of Islam, of Muslimin, to make people feel that Islam, Muslimin, Ashura, Imam al-Hussein is something that they want to avoid. They want to keep a distance from. Our job is to fight this. And the weapons for this war are smiles, are confidence, are speech, are words of clarity, are reason, logic. Their approach is irrational. Their approach is illogical. Their approach is against humanity. Their approach is inhuman on so many different levels. Our approach is human. Our approach is rational. Our approach is based on divine guidance. Divine guidance is the most lofty, the highest level of reason and wisdom, hikmah, that there can be. I apologize for the length in the response.
No worries at all, Shaykh. The more comprehensive answers we get, I believe it is better, as it may answer some of the more technical or detailed questions that may arise later. The next question is similar to the one that was asked before, but it says, it's from a sister, and it says, as a fresh graduate, I'm wondering if I should move to a Muslim country like Pakistan, where there's obvious corruption in society.
Part of the question I think I've already responded to, and that is the necessity of moving back. The answer to that is based on what the Maraja have said. There's no necessity whatsoever. In fact, I will add something. In fact, if you decide to stay for Islam, like Salman accepted for Islam, there's things to do for Islam, not for leisure, not for enjoying the benefits, not for that. While it's not wrong to enjoy the benefits, that's not what we're saying, but that is not the purpose of the stay, but rather using the talent, the abilities for Islam. And inshallah, if you want that, if you ask the 12th Imam, speak in your own language. When there's no one around, talk to the Imam. The Imam hears. Wallah, the Imam hears. The Imam knows. The Imam sees. And if you're genuine, the Imam will guide. And if you stay there, that will be a jihad fi sabilillah, if that's the purpose. And of course, if anybody decides to move back to Pakistan to help the Pakistani people because of the problems that have been brought to the Pakistani people for so many decades through the influence of shayateen, the influence of the British, the influence of the Americans, the influence of the Saudis, all that corruption. This was the point that I wanted to emphasize on. Don't think that the corruption in Pakistan is because Pakistani people are corrupt. Pakistani people are fed up with corruption. They hate corruption. There are elements that are foreign to Pakistan that find the parasites. Every people has parasites. They have bad amongst them. These shayateen find the worst of the people, they put them in those positions, and they ruin the lives of people. Pakistan deserves a much better. You have resources. You have human resources. The population is such a great asset. Huge population in Pakistan. And they're all Muslimin for the most part, 90+%. I don't know if there's any non-Muslims. I've heard there are some, very few. All Muslims, be it Sunni or Shia, they're all Muslims though. Everybody is Muslim. It's a great asset. Great asset. This could be used. The developments of the Muslimin in Pakistan. Look at all the great Pakistani minds that are unfortunately now all serving in other countries. If that talent, those abilities were used in Pakistan in the right way, under Muslim guidance, without the shayateen, without their influence, without their bribery, without them feeding the pockets of those who are causing this corruption, where it's sad to say even electricity, water, these basic needs, with all those resources, all that rain that comes is all assets to make natural and non-polluting forms of electricity, clean energy through water dams, all that could be used. It's all going to waste. Why? Because of the involvement of the shayateen, the Saudis, which are the puppets again. And so I would like to say that we shouldn't think that, oh, these other countries are not corrupt and then there's corruption in Pakistan. No, that's not. The corruption stems from these countries. The corruption comes from, it's an extension of the corruption of Trump. You see how idiotic, foolish, ridiculous, and how corrupt, openly corrupt the American president right now is. And you're not even getting half of the corruption. What you hear in the media about the corruption of Trump is not even half of the corruption of this idiot and his family. And this is a semi-uncovered version of all American presidents and congressmen and women. Corruption comes from these countries. Corruption comes from kufr. And the Saudis are puppets of the Americans. That's why all the money that they bring in turns into weapons. All the assassinations in Pakistan are blamed on these people in these countries. And I hope that, inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives strength to the believers in Pakistan, all those who are struggling to change the conditions for the people in Pakistan, for the Muslimin of Pakistan, or as a taklif that they have, that Islam gives them. There are those who are struggling. We ask Allah to give them strength, give them wisdom, and help them be able to change the conditions in Pakistan for the Pakistani people, so that Pakistani people don't need to live under more comfortable conditions, more secure conditions, that they don't have to live under fear that any moment, if they are educated or if they have money or if they have this or if they have that they could be assassinated at any point while on the way to work or wherever. Inshallah, we pray that changes.
Thank you, Shaykh, again. Yeah, again, very insightful. And this next question pertains more towards our religious obligation towards learning the deen. So the question is as follows. Do you think that everyone, especially people who are starting their life after education, should take some time to learn authentic religious beliefs from Hamza?
I believe that the Imams have made it very clear that the Quran, the Imams, and just, I guess, common sense, that if Allah has provided us with guidance, we need to go and learn what that is. And if we don't learn it and we make mistakes in life, it's our fault that we didn't learn that. That's clearly the case. However, does that mean that the avenue for that is the Hawza and everybody should move to Qom or Najaf or whatever other city in whatever country? There's different countries. These are the two main centers currently, Qom being the main one at the moment. Does that mean that we need to go to these centers of knowledge, Hawza, and learn? I would say no, that's not the case. Why? Because the Hawza is for someone who wants to dedicate their life for Islamic scholarship and then being a soldier for the 12th Imam. That's for those people, not for those who have other careers, inshallah, intending Islam in mind, but other careers, other talents, other abilities, other professions. It's not for them. To go to the Hawza to learn a couple of years, the Hawza is just not designed for that. As someone who has experience in the institution of the Hawza, we were running a Hawza for about 8 years, and we were involved in various attempts and efforts to even implement something close to what is being said right now. The issue is that it's not designed for that. We need to, so now that that explanation is there, we need to learn. The Hawza is not designed for those who don't want to dedicate their lives to go and learn. And there's a lot of obstacles. It's just not practical for that to be said. It's not going to happen, even if we say that. Even if a number of people get to go, the outcome, the result is not going to be what we're looking for. So if that's the case, then what is the avenue? What should we do? First, I will start by saying we need to, since it's our responsibility to learn, okay, we have to start thinking about this, get creative, and try to make connections and try to create platforms where this is going to be possible, whatever that may be. That's the first thing. Don't consider, so it's not being offered by the Hawza, so let's forget about this. No, it's our responsibility to learn. We've got to create this. One of the avenues that is happening are these majalis. Let's try to enrich them as you're trying to learn more. And then besides the majalis that are on special occasions, try to look for, it is the responsibility of those who have gathered that knowledge from the Hawza to share that. And so if there's an opportunity where there is access to ask such people to provide sessions where it's not a majlis type setup, we can get more information and we can have a dialogue. I mean, this question and answer is an addition to this session, which is enriching you. This is a good example. Of course, I'm not the right person. I don't have knowledge. I have got to limit what I say to whatever. But the idea of having question, it makes it a dialogue where it helps with further understanding. This is a good thing. Try to increase these. That's one area. The other thing is communities need to be involved in getting books down. Unfortunately, because of the absence of proper scholarship in the English language, we are seeing that books are being published that, although the authors, people involved in those works may have very good intentions, and mostly they do. I think, if anything, probably maybe only a few have bad intentions, if any at all. I don't know of any, honestly. But despite those good intentions, because the scholarship is not there, the work does not contain too much Islamic information and knowledge. So it's a mixture. Some of it is accurate, much of it is inaccurate, and that does not help with us moving towards a better understanding of Islam. There needs to be an effort to work on developing Islamic literature in the English language. It's not something that one person or two people can take the burden of. Everybody needs to try to see in their community how they can contribute towards this. Find whatever's out there. There is work that's being produced. People in different parts of the world know of portions or parts of that. It's partial knowledge of what's available. Some of what's being produced is not available to all. One thing about that is to search and try to find what all is available. There is work that is being produced. There are works that have been written or translated. Find the good ones and find what's missing and try to look towards creating translations, works, literature. So classes in literature is what we need to work on and get. There are Hawza students in those cities as well that may have time. There are some Hawza students in the West as well that may have some time. We need to make use of these resources that are available to try to gain that knowledge, inshallah.
Okay, thank you, Agha. I think we have room for one last question before we finish up. And the next question is, how important is it to establish Islamic educational systems in these societies, and should the Islamic Center or Husseiniya play a role in it? And it's further clarified, by these societies they mean Muslim societies living in the West.
Absolutely. Having our children be taught the sciences, the arts, based on an Islamic foundation, an Islamic philosophy that doesn't look at the world as this random piece of existence that is completely disconnected from anything and everything in it is random. It presents the sciences as understanding God's creation as it actually is, and the order that is very evident in it, all stemming from the divine's wisdom, God's wisdom in this creation. And the akhlaq, look at American schools, look at what the civilization, the beacon of Western civilization is the United States. The whole world longs to be in the US, although even unfortunately have influenced Muslim countries and Muslimin. Everybody wants to be in the United States of America, California, want to visit Hollywood and all this stuff. Look at what's happening in American schools. Children are picking up guns and killing people. This is the akhlaq. A family in Houston, when I was there, there was a Muslim school in Houston. There still is. When I was there, one of the families that had taken their children out of public schools and put them into Islamic schools, their reasoning for it and their logic for it was this, that their child was going to a public school. Then they came home and the family starts realizing that there's something wrong going on here. And they come to hear that the person that their child is sitting by in class and talking to comes from a family that the father shot the mother in front of the kids. What type of mental trauma is this child going through? This poor child in this family that had no fault at being there. But then now the child from this family is being influenced by that. Look at, and I don't want to get into, some of those other aspects of it. The point is, Western culture with the ideology that is presented in it has all these negative moral effects on people. Should we not create an environment where the teachers and the students, to the best of our ability, have something at least cleaner, at least a little cleaner than that? Don't we try to go into, from a material perspective, don't we try to be where there's sanitization, where the air is clean, where what we touch is clean, where we're not exposed to all these viruses and bacteria? Aren't we practicing social distancing? Don't we have this session on Zoom because we want to go by those guidelines to avoid having the virus being contaminated by it? Why is it that when it comes to the spiritual development, the mental development, which is what we are more than our material bodies, we're not animals. We are human beings. Our needs are not limited to grazing and reproduction and taking care of, some shelter. This is not our need. Our needs are more complex. Our needs are spiritual and mental. We can't be acting like animals. Now, when it comes to our material needs, we take it that serious. When it comes to our spiritual needs, we're not willing to take measures to keep away from the contaminations. I think reason, logic, the Quran, the sayings of the Ahl, everything points in the direction that, to the best of our ability, we can't create an environment out here without the help of society at large to clean all of society. We can't do that. Okay. We don't have the means because everybody needs to be on board. Right now, unfortunately, everybody in the West is not on board. They think we're terrorists. They think we're bad people. That's their wrong perception of us. So we can't create an environment for all. Well, if we can't do that, but we can create something small to help our children grow up with the right thought process, with the right moral environment. And then when they grow up like that, they can start influencing society on a greater scale. And hopefully there will come a time that more people will be on board with this, and then the Imam of our time will come and everybody will help in cleaning this earth, ridding the earth from all this nasty ideology that hurts everybody on so many different levels, and everybody will be living in paradise on earth. The government of the Imam of our time, with the ideology of Islam, and everybody being on board with it, everybody choosing it, everybody wanting it, moving towards implementing it more and more, is going to lead to an earth that will be paradise, real paradise on earth, inshallah.
As you've summed it up perfectly, Shaykh, like, you know, to a great degree here, society and the way schools and the way the systems and social setups are built, it's, you know, like a lot of our aspects of our life are reduced to the material things that we have or the physical, and there's no true reflection or understanding beyond that. You've explained it perfectly, and then obviously having gone through school and then the social circles and the way things work here, I can absolutely back you up on that. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for today. I'd like to apologize to everyone whose questions were missed out on today. They have been noted, and inshallah, Shaykh will be able to answer them tomorrow. I'd like to thank you so much for spending so much time with us and enlightening us with your knowledge. And I would also like to thank the speakers earlier, reciter Jari Abbas for his recitation tilawat of the Holy Quran, and Brother Faraz Mahdi as well. Shaykh, obviously, thank you for your speech and then your wonderful answers afterwards as well. I would urge everyone to join us again tomorrow at the same time between 6 to 7:30 p.m. Dublin time, and inshallah we'll see you then. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Thank you very much. All of you.